So the summary. So the summary of the breathing exchange of gases, right? Cells utilize oxygen for metabolism and produce energy along with the substances like carbon dioxide, which is harmful. Okay. Cells utilize oxygen for metabolism and produce energy along with the substances like carbon dioxide, which is harmful. Okay. So animals have evolved different mechanisms for the transport of oxygen to the cells and for the removal of carbon dioxide from there. So, so animals have evolved different mechanisms for the transport of oxygen to the cells and for the removal of carbon dioxide from there. So we have a well-developed respiratory system comprising uh, so So we have a well-developed respiratory system comprising two lungs and associated air passages to perform this function. Now, the first step in respiration is breathing. The first step in respiration is breathing, by which atmospheric air is taken in, that is inspiration, and the alveolar air is released out, that is expiration. Now, the exchange of O2 and CO2 between deoxygenated blood and alveoli. Okay, deoxygenated blood and alveoli. Then the transport of these gases throughout the body by blood. Now exchange of O2 and CO2 between the oxygenated blood and tissues, right? And then last step is utilization of oxygen by the cells, that is cellular respiration. Are the other steps involved? So this is all the process of steps of breathing, that is breathing. Now inspiration and expiration are carried out by creating pressure gradients between the atmosphere and the alveoli with the help of the specialized muscles, intercostal intercostals and diaphragm. Okay. Now volumes of air involved in these activities can be estimated with the help of spirometer and are of clinical significance. Okay. So volume of air involved in these activities can be estimated with the help of spirometer and, and are of clinical significance, right? Exchange of O2 and CO2 at the alveoli and tissues occur by diffusion. At the alveoli and tissues occur by diffusion, that is simple diffusion. So rate of diffusion is depend on the partial pressure gradients of PO2 and partial pressure of CO2, that is PCO2, and their solubility as well as the thickness of the diffusion surface. So three things are needed. Now these factors in our body facilitate diffusion of oxygen from the alveoli to the deoxygenated blood as well as from the oxygenated blood to the tissues. And the factors are favorable for the diffusion of CO2 in the opposite direction, that is from tissues to alveoli. So from tissues to deoxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood to alveoli. So this is the path. Okay. Oxygen is transported mainly as oxyhemoglobin, right? So the oxygen is transported mainly as oxyhemoglobin. Okay. In the alveoli, where partial pressure of oxygen is higher, oxygen gets bound to hemoglobin, which is easily dissociated at the tissues where partial pressure of O2 is low and partial pressure of CO2 and H plus concentration are high. Okay. Nearly 70% of the carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate with the help of the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Okay. Now 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide is carried by hemoglobin as carbaminohemoglobin. Okay. In the tissues where partial pressure of CO2 is high, it gets bound to as carbaminohemoglobin. in okay, now in the tissues where partial pressure of CO2 is high, it gets bound to blood, whereas in alveoli where PCO2 is low and PO2 is high, it gets removed from the blood. I repeat it again. In tissues where PCO2 is high, it gets bound to blood. When partial pressure of CO2 is high, it gets bound to the blood. Okay. Whereas in the alveoli where PCO2 is low and PO2 is high, it gets removed from the blood. Okay. Now, respiratory rhythm is maintained by the respiratory center in the medulla region of the brain. A pneumotaxic center in the pons region of the brain and a chemosynthetic area in the medulla can alter the respiratory mechanism. So respiratory rhythm is maintained by the respiratory center in the medulla region of the brain, pneumotoxic center in the pons region of the brain. A chemosynthetic area in the medulla can alter respiratory mechanism. Now the exercises. Define vital capacity. Max to max, that is maximum inhalation to maximum exhalation. This is the vital capacity. What is its significance? State the volume of air remaining in the lungs after a normal breathing. State the volume of air remaining in the lungs after a normal breathing. So after a normal breathing, volume of air remaining in the lungs is I think the functional residual volume, right? Diffusion of gases occurs in the alveolar region only and not in the other parts of the respiratory system. Why? So diffusion of gases occurs in the alveolar region only and not in the other parts of the respiratory system. Why? Because they have the diffusion membrane, they have the partial pressure and all that. So what are the major transport mechanisms for CO2? Explain. So like 70% as bicarbonate and 20 to 25% as carbaminohemoglobin and I guess 7% it goes with the as dissolved state. Now what will be the partial pressure of O2 and partial pressure of CO2 in the atmospheric air compared to those in the alveolar air? So partial pressure of PO2 is higher in the alveolar air and partial pressure of CO2 is lesser in the alveolar layer, right? Explain the process of inspiration under normal condition. Now the process of inspiration, that is, it involves the intercostal muscles plus diaphragm. Okay, now the process of inspiration, like it 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 it, it contracts the diaphragm, like from dome shaped. Okay, how is respiration regulated? By the medulla. There is compensated area, there is pneumatic center in pons region. Okay, so how is respiration regulated? With the help of H plus ion, partial pressure of O2, partial pressure of CO2 and temperature. So this thing regulates the respiration. Now what is the effect of partial pressure of CO2 on oxygen transport? So higher the pure CO2, lower is the oxygen heme bond. Okay, so lower the partial pressure of CO2, higher is the oxygen hemoglobin bond, oxyhemoglobin bond, right? Now what happens to the respiratory process in a man going up a hill? So so due to the due to the low atmospheric pressure of oxygen, he feels like nausea. Okay, then heart rate increases, blood cells increase. So this is all happening. Okay, now what is the site of difficult to breathe? So what is the site of gaseous exchange in an insect? So tracheal tubes are there, and then uh, Malpighian tubules in cockroaches. No, these are for excretion. So this is it. Define oxygen dissociation curve. Now oxygen dissociation curve, right? Can you suggest any reason for its sigmoidal pattern? Reason for its sigmoidal pattern, because if it's increase the partial pressure of CO2, oxygen dissociation curve uh, shifts to the right. Okay, and if the partial pressure of CO2 is less and partial pressure of O2 is high, the oxidation dissociation curve moves to the left. That is the sigmoid pattern. So have you heard about hypoxia? Try to gather information about it and discuss with your friend. So hypoxia, right? Google it and distinguish between IRV, that is, and ERV, and inspiratory reserve volume, and then expiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory reserve volume, tidal volume plus okay, it's like, so inspiratory reserve volume, so the volume after the normal breathing, after the normal expiration, the volume that forcibly, the additional volume that forcibly taken, that is the IRV. That is the IRV, that is inspiratory reserve volume. It is around like how much is that? And ERV, that is 1000 to 1100 after normal inspiration. The additional volume that you can excrete out, that release out, that is the expiratory reserve volume. Okay, now inspiratory capacity and expiratory capacity. So same with the that now inspiratory capacity, it involves the tidal volume, and inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory capacity involves tidal volume and the expiratory reserve volume. Yeah, this is it. And vital capacity and total lung capacity. So vital capacity, so after so after so after forcible expiration, the maximum amount of air can be inspired is known as the vital capacity. And total lung capacity, it involves everything, that is uh, inspiratory capacity, expiratory capacity, and uh, FRC, functional residual capacity, and then vital capacity. Okay, so this all included. What is tidal volume? Find out the tidal volume for a healthy human in an hour. So it is around, so for healthy human it is around 6,000, I think. What is tidal volume? It is the normal breathing, that is expiration and inspiration. So this is the tidal volume. It is around 500. Okay, so this is your chapter is done in here, right?